Cabrera, thank you so much for hosting us today and all that you do at Georgia Tech does for economic development and workforce development in Georgia. Let me thank all of you for being with us today. This is our 4th annual Future of Talent. Any of you been with us all 4 years? Raise your hand. Thank you, Dr. Rickman. We appreciate it. And my staff. So the rest of you, welcome. We expect to see you next year. Sign up early. Get on the bandwagon now. I love what Dr. Cabrera said that a few years ago this discussion was important today. It's essential. And we want you to be part of that discussion today. This event, unlike the last 3 years, is a little different in that it's not just the Georgia Chamber, but it's also the Georgia Partnership for Excellence in Education, our incredible affiliate that focuses for the last 31 years, right, 32 years, on K through 12 policy. So Dr. Rickman and her team, thank you. We'll hear from her in a few moments. And also helping with this event today is our Vice President for the Georgia Chamber Foundation, Danielle Perry. Danielle, wave to everyone. You'll see her up here today. Danielle is also leading our new Center for Workforce and Talent Preparedness, which I'll mention in a few minutes. Also, on behalf of our chairman, Pedro Cherry, who's with us, we'll hear from him a little bit later. We welcome all of you, and a special thank you to our sponsors. We can't do anything without the incredible sponsors that make these events possible. And so thank you guys for being with us. This is an important conversation, and I want to share with you a little refresh and a look at the data and the work that we're doing at the Chamber, and the conversation that we're going to have around the state this year to help business leaders, educators, and our partners understand exactly what's happening in the workforce development space, but more importantly, what we need to be doing together to work on that. So my normal disclaimer here still stands. If you like data, what I'm going to share with you is going to be awesome. If you do not like data, this is a great time to do a hashtag and check your Twitter feed over the next few minutes. But I think it's important for you to understand the data, know what's happening out there in order to make the right corrections and to make the right decisions for the future of Georgia's workforce. So let's just jump into it and start with where we are from an economic standpoint. Thanks to Governor Kemp and our friends at the Department of Economic Development, we've now experienced the 5th year in a row of record economic development activity in our state. 2,200 major projects that have announced they're moving here are expanding, including our friends at Kiev now officially building the first EV built in Georgia, just rolled off the plant floor, what, 2 weeks ago now? 3 weeks ago, and more coming every day. Those 2,200 companies are investing, this is a big number, $134 billion over the next 3 years just in construction and equipment for those new facilities. That will help keep the state's economy growing through whatever recession or downturn might come globally. These are incredible numbers, really only seen maybe in Texas across the whole entire country. The good news is, for those of us not from metro areas, like my friend Max Seal and others in the room today, 77% of all that economic activity is happening outside of Metro Atlanta. It's incredible numbers. Those are all great, those are all good numbers to celebrate. The number that does keep me up at night is the fact that those 2,200 companies need to hire almost 270,000 more Georgians and keep them employed over the next few years. And quite frankly, everyone in this room, every room I go into in the state, you have open positions today. But here's the other thing that's interesting about these 2,200 companies. As they made their announcements and they moved to literally every corner of Georgia, they really kind of highlighted to us the gaps in our system, where we've got workforce issues, where we don't have the labor supply, where we're not accessing the men and women we need to, and what that long-term pipeline in our communities should be looking like to fill these positions over the next 20 and 30 years. Which means, as a state, if these new companies are having these issues, so are Georgia companies. Which means we need to have a different discussion around workforce preparedness. So let's jump into it and talk about what's actually happening right now as we start 2024. Now we're almost in our 3rd month of 2024. It happens to move so quickly. But when we look at the workforce back in January, as we looked at all the numbers from 23, here's what we saw. About 23% of Georgia's workforce right now is on a telework or flexible schedule. And for those of you that are old and grumpy like I am, that number is not going to change. It will continue to grow and grow and grow until about 2030, 2035, when it gets to be almost 70%. You need to be thinking about what that looks like in your workforce. Here's the good news on this slide, some really good news. 83% right now in Georgia are either working or looking for work.
That number is vastly improved over just 24 months ago. Only about 16% of our workforce have said, we're out, we're completely disengaged. Again, much better numbers. And the fact that we've now started to see a little bit of movement in our high-skilled foreign worker sector, up about 4.3%. And really good news for our employees, wage growth now is outpacing inflation for the first time in the last 3 years, and productivity growth is improving. So overall, very positive workforce. But let's talk about that 83% for a moment. They're either working or they're looking for work. And here's the number that should bother you as an employer. 51% of those men and women do have a job today, but they're looking for another job. They're looking. Whether or not you know they're looking or not, their antenna's up. So what does that look like? Well, here's what's really interesting. When we dig in deep about what your employees are looking for, 54% want career pathways, 48% want talent progression, 25% or 33% want upskilling, reskilling. Embedded in all of these numbers are your employees' desires to continue to grow and flourish and understand what's happening and get the skill sets they need to be successful. So they know they need new skills. And when we go to the employers and ask them, how's it going as you're hiring workers, what are they telling us? Well, they're telling us that the employees they're getting don't quite have the skills they need to be successful. Here are the 3 skills that come up the most. Technical skills, and somebody asked me the other day, what does that mean? And I said, the fact that you can turn on a computer. Let's just be simple with each other. President Cabrera was right. We got to get to everybody's ready to use AI, but right now we just need them all to be technology savvy. You will use data in every job that you have, whether you're a farmer, you're a nurse, whether you're a technician, you will need technical skills. You also need critical thinking. The fact is, we told everyone you needed a STEM degree, and we forgot that you're going to need humanities to learn how to analyze and communicate what you learned over here on the technical skill side. So when you add up what employers are not seeing in their workforce with what employees actually think, you get a pretty stark number. That today there's a 50% skills mismatch in that critical working age population of 25 to 44 that need upskilling and reskilling today, calling all my technical colleges and universities around the state. They will need upskilling not just right now and not just tomorrow, but for the rest of their lives as this economy picks up pace. And so let's talk about how to prepare these workers better and who needs to be prepared that's out there. So here's my favorite slide, and I used it last year, and I'm going to use it until you're tired of it and you see it in your sleep. There are 4 things that are going to happen in Georgia and around the world in the next 6 years that's going to make this problem of workforce and talent preparedness even more difficult for us. So first of all, where are my millennials in the room? Thank you. We will all be working for you at some point. So treat Gen Xers with kindness. We've been kind to you. We've been prepared for you millennials. We've been working for you, and everybody's been talking about you your whole life. You will be 41% of the workforce starting next year in Georgia for the foreseeable future. You will dominate the workforce in Georgia, come what may. And the workforce is kind of built for you at this point. What you're not prepared for is the fact that Gen Z is now coming into the workforce. Where are my Gen Zers in the room? Oh, they're all at 2 tables down front and 1 over here. Next year, they will make up 31% of the workforce. And trust me, employers, you're not ready for them. Okay? Very different generation with different needs. But here's the other thing that HR managers need to understand that educators are seeing, have been seeing now, Braun, for the last 5 or 6 years. when you combine millennials and with Gen Z, you have the most diverse generations in history, which means the workforce will fundamentally change the way it looks, starting actually probably this year going into next year. Next year, almost 60% of all available workers in Georgia will be female, which puts even more pressure on us to address child care needs in this state. 31% will be black, and that will be steady for the next 20 years. Latino population, 20% of the workforce, and growing exponentially in every corner of Georgia for the next 20 years. Atlanta itself will add 1 million more Latinos just in the next 15 years. Remarkable growth there. So, the workforce itself is changing dramatically. It's moving from a workforce that looked like me, middle-aged old white dude, to one that is the most diverse workforce in the history of the world. And most of you are not prepared for that workforce. Here's the second thing that's happened. Does anybody remember the recession of 2008? For those of you too young to remember, let me just sum it up this way. Most of us lost our 401k, most of us lost our houses or a car or two, and Americans in particular lost their libido. Our birth rate is now lower than it was in 2008. And so starting with my son's graduating class this year, we will start having smaller and smaller graduating high school classes in America for the foreseeable future. And if you have fewer kids coming out of high school, that means you have fewer kids going to or technical college, which means 4, 6, 10 years from now, you have fewer people in the workforce. You're a great participatory group. I appreciate that. This is going to put a lot more pressure on those young workers that we've got out there. Here's the other thing. Where are my baby boomers in the room? You guys have had a great run. Thanks for the memories. All baby boomers will be retirement age by 2030. That's 6 million jobs that will be vacated from the most talented generation in history. You do not have enough people behind them, Gen X, Millennials, Gen Z, to fill those jobs. And so if you're not thinking today about how to keep, boomers don't like me to use the term seniors, excuse me, boomers. If you don't have a policy to keep boomers engaged, part-time, temporary, contract workers, you're going to lose so much intellectual capital, your business is not going to be able to keep up. This is going to reverberate through the economy, and I'll show you some data in just a minute. And then the last thing that's going to happen over the next 6 years is exactly what Dr. Cabrera talked about, this growth of AI. About 12 million U.S. men and women will have to transfer their jobs to upskill in the next 6 years in order to stay employed because they're in low-skill jobs that will be taken over by AI. And for those of you with mid-skill jobs thinking, well, I'm golden, AI is coming for your job in the next generation, and those of you with high skills in about 2040. So you do need to learn how to use it. Dr. Cabrera kind of said it. But it's not the fact that AI will take your job, but it's a dude that knows how to work AI will take your job. So what does that look like? What does that impact? It means that almost every career field that you can imagine in Georgia will have a double-digit demand by the end of this decade. Look at every sector out there. Career opportunities for our young men and women in the corner over here, unbelievable. But the other need, the skilled trades, significant issues there because we've spent 20 years telling every kid they need a 4-year degree, and now we don't have anybody to build stuff, make stuff, grow stuff for us. This is a preparedness issue. So, here's where that preparedness issue really hits the wall. I'll simplify this slide for you. 40% of our high school students will graduate this year having never worked a day in their life. How many of you had a summer job, part-time job? Yeah, it was not an option in the Clark household growing up. I told my dad when I graduated high school, I went in the week before, I said, hey, I'm not going to work this summer. It's my last summer. I want to have a good time before I go to college. I was doing construction work the next morning. I learned my lesson. 40% of kids having never worked, but 40% of our high school students are graduating with nothing but a high school diploma. No certificate, no credit, nothing beyond that. This is a preparedness crisis. We have got to reconnect our students, and we'll talk about that today a lot, about how to reconnect those high school students with those opportunities. Why is it important for them to be prepared for college? Well, in the next 10 years, we're going to add over 100,000 more jobs to the Georgia economy every single year for the next 6 years. But our population growth is not going to match that. It's going to be great opportunities for the labor pool in Georgia if we get them prepared and get them in the right position. And we need them, desperately, they need to be able to get the degrees and to think beyond high school, because look at what the data shows us. This is amazing. About 20% of Georgians have a bachelor's degree right now. Of that 20%, only about 4.5% live in poverty and 3.1% are unemployed. But when you jump down a level and say that you have some college, maybe it's your technical college degree, which is again about 20% of the population, your poverty rate does go up, almost doubles, but your unemployment stays about where we are. Those are great numbers for us. But look at what happens if you graduate with only a high school diploma and you don't move on and you're not prepared beyond that. 15% chance you're living in poverty and almost a 7% chance you're unemployed right now in the best labor market that we've ever had. So if you got a kid sitting there saying, well, Mama, I don't know if I want to go to the technical college next year, show them this slide, because this is their future. You got to think about those young men and women and how we prepare them. But you've also, as employers and as people in the workforce space, we've got men and women that want to work in our communities that aren't given the opportunity and aren't being plugged in. This is just a snapshot. Just in Georgia, over 600,000 military veterans that want to work. Do you have a program to help them get involved? And you're saying, well, Chris, we'll hire military all day and night. I bet you're missing a lot of good military men and women. I joked with one yesterday. Their resumes don't look like normal people's resumes, and a lot of times they get kicked out by your HR staff that don't understand how to read that military CV. Or your AI is kicking them out. You got 2.2 million Georgians with disabilities today that want to work, but they just might need a little help from you. 2,600 refugees that have come to Georgia. 11,000 foster kids that age out of the system at 18 with no support system in place. We have a nonprofit partner right now that will help you take those foster kids, wrap around and love them, give them the support so they can work for you long term with apprenticeships. 4.6 million Georgians are second chancers. They've got some kind of criminal record out there. That's about this whole quarter of the room over here. If you're not ready to engage, and our friend Bruce Thompson at the Department of Labor, multiple groups in Georgia are willing to help you find the right workers there. 1.8 million senior citizens in Georgia that tell us they would like to work at least part-time. Are you tapping into them? And then for those of you struggling with the workers that you've got, about 9% of your workforce in Georgia are addicted today. And about 40% have some type of mental health issue. Are you wrapping around them? Because the best worker to keep is the one you already got, right? They need different help and different support. So there's a world of folks out there I want you to think about. And then there's another group that we haven't spent a lot of time on. And that's the group that Bronwyn and Dana are working with every day, and that's Generation Alpha. And I actually had an Alpha in my audience yesterday for the first time ever. But I assume you guys have an Alpha at home or a grandkid. Raise your hand. All right. You're really not prepared for this generation. Here's what we know about them. Born from 2010 to 2025, they will be the largest generation in history. And you're saying, oh, great, there's light at the end of the tunnel here for when they come into the workforce. Kinda. But remember I told you we weren't having babies as much anymore? This generation is being born in India, China, and in Nigeria. America's barely in the top 10. The fact is Nigeria will have a larger population than America by 2040. We have seeded that next generation, so that means we have to fix immigration as well. They'll be in college starting in 2030, so our colleges have to start thinking differently. They'll be in the workforce around 2035 to 2045 if we're lucky. Here's what we know about them, and I've talked to a lot of kindergarten teachers that really have illustrated this well to me. This young generation is hyper-connected. They can do 2 cell phones and an iPad at the same time. but they have the attention span of a goldfish. That is going to impact you. And kindergartner teachers are telling us, right, that how their teaching is changing and has to change dramatically right now. Think about what that's going to be like when they get to you. They're very independent because we locked them away for 2 years, but they don't know how to socialize. They don't play well together. So we're asking teachers ways to build that collaboration. That's why we need them to work. They're very visual, but they lack creativity, and they're very technological, but that does have mental health impact. And for those of you, again, that are old and crusty like me who kind of shrug off that mental health issue, stop it. These are significant issues. Every time I give this conversation in a community, I have a mother or father that comes up and literally cry together and pray together because of what their children have gone through. It is a serious issue, and you need to be prepared. And so, we talk about what the data says, where we're at with this, but then the question becomes, what's the solution? Well, that's what this discussion today is about, right? That's why we created the Center for Workforce and Talent Preparedness, to bring businesses together, to bring groups together, to work with partners to address these issues. Some of those issues we address at the Capitol. Right now, there's a variety of bills that we're working on dealing with child care. We're trying to lower the child care deduction right now. That bill should pass, I believe we passed it last week in the House, moved to the Senate. Dealing with transportation, flexibility in hiring and firing, skills updating. Vitally important. The skills of the future, as Angel said a minute ago, are very different than the skills that we all got 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And then we also have this incredible need at the local level, regional level, and state level to work together. Heaven forbid. I see Barbara back there. She beats her head against the wall trying to get communities to work together, school systems to work together. Here's what we're focused on at the Georgia Chamber. We need to build out these critical skills because these are what our businesses tell us. They need young workers, new workers, existing workers to understand, live, work for the next 20, 30 years. There are life skills here. There are career skills. And I worry about the lack of entrepreneur skills. It's a very different set of needs and demands. But underlying all of that is this call for a return to a strong work ethic. You say, well, what are you even talking about? So my 17-year-old, I don't know if you guys have heard, there's a computer program called TikTok. Is this new to anybody? Okay. Christian, my son, showed me that there are literally tens of thousands of videos online talking about the unnecessity of work, the futility of work, that is targeting and feeding into his generation. And so we have these deep conversations at home about the fact that we were all created to work, to do good deeds, to fulfill our purpose. But we're losing that in the social media space. And so having these conversations about the value of work and work ethic is vitally and critically important for all of us as parents, teachers, educators, and employers. Got it? Work is good, right? You were responsive earlier, and now you just shut down because you all hate your jobs. That's on you. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. So what do we do about it? I'm going to land the plane here. So part of our effort, and you'll hear about all of these as we move through today, with our new Center for Workforce and Talent Preparedness. One is this incredible partnership that we have with the State Board of Education, which Baldwin and the superintendent will talk about later today. We've just given away $1 million in grants to rural communities to partner up with their local businesses to get kids the skills that they need. You're going to hear about some of those success stories today. If you believe in mentorship, we have an incredible program through our friends at Georgia College to mentor the next generation, to plug those students in with leaders around Georgia so they understand what's necessary and happening. You're going to hear today from our friends at Flex, which is an incredible entrepreneurial competition program that's spreading throughout the state of Georgia, that's now an affiliate of our organization, to teach kids the skills they need, risk-taking skills, starting their own business, the values there. You're also going to hear from Misty and our friends at Be Pro, Be Proud, which is another incredible affiliate, which has this great truck. She'll talk to you about it later, that comes in and teaches the importance of skilled trades to your young men and women. So lots of opportunities for you to engage. You're going to hear about all of these programs today and much, much more. But really what we want you to do, besides taking pictures of the great data and listening, is to coordinate and network with the men and women in this room, to partner with each other, to find solutions, and to help us take this message and take these conversations back into our communities all over Georgia, into every business every day. Got it? Awesome. You're doing much better at this. So I do want a lot of the data that you're going to ask for today, a lot of it you can get in our Red Book. We have hard copies outside, but you can also take a picture and get a digital copy. And then we just released our quarterly update at the Georgia Chamber. Daniela's team did, looking at a variety of these data points as well. And you can get all of those online. So with that, we're going to keep the party going. And I'm happy to introduce my good friend and partner, Dr. Dana Rickman, who's the president of the Georgia Partnership for Excellence in Education, an affiliate the Georgia Chamber helped found over 32 years ago to focus on K-12 workforce. And they do an incredible job, and I'm so thankful that we're doing this program together today, Dana, and all that you do. Thank you guys for being with us today. God bless. Welcome, Dana Rickman.